everyone. On this episode of Mismatch, I have a very good friend of mine who I'm very excited to have in the studio with me today. His name is Steven Branco. So Steven is a serial entrepreneur, award-winning creative, and men's lifestyle expert known for his sharp taste in fashion, travel, food, and tech. He literally does it all. He's a proud first gen. He's visited 42 countries and counting, I'm sure, because we've talked a little bit of travel just earlier before we hit play. Speaks 3 languages and really brings a global, authentic point of view to everything that he does. He's a former editor-in-chief of Swagger magazine and a leader at Stamina Group. So Steven has built and shaped major digital platforms, including View the Vibe, Wonder Eater Mag, Jen's Post, Jen's Talk Pod, Collab Tips, and so much more. Steven, your intro could be 10 minutes long if I wanted it to be, because sincerely, you do so many things.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like to wear a lot of hats.
You wear a lot of hats and stylish ones at that, I will say. I'm really excited for you to be here today because I feel like we're going to have a conversation that I really haven't spoken about on Mismatch before, and that's celebrating queer love and queer relationships. And my closest friends are gay. And so I really want to kind of dive into a bunch of different things, from your journey to, society and views that people have today, and kind of making a bridge for people, because I feel like often think it's black or white, and it's simply just not that.
Not at all.
There's a lot of gray that people are, I like to give the benefit of the doubt, or maybe just afraid of not knowing.
I agree. I would even go as far as saying that, like, that simple analogy of black, white, and gray is so close-minded. It really is like the color spectrum, right? And that all the colors combined forms black, and you remove it and it's white. And the reason why it's a scale and a spectrum is because there's so many few and far between. There's no like 3 buckets that you put people into. And I've had the privilege of getting to know people who fall on different parts of that spectrum. Some that are on one side that are like, oh, I only like men, or I only like women, and then others that like to experiment here and there, and some that are in denial, and some that I truly believe are what they are, or what they say they are, which is, in some cases, heteronormative couples that like to explore their sexuality outside of that, whether that's bringing in another male into the group or another female into the group, or multiple. And I think a lot of that stems from when you are able to eventually get to this point in your life where you realize that sexual activity is so much more and very different than what your preferences are in a relationship. I know people who say that like they can have, sexual relations with men or women, but they can only build a intimate and emotional bond with a man or a woman. And that's an interesting perspective. Not something that I can necessarily say that I relate with, but I can definitely say that, and you and my partner have had this conversation, that like once you reach this point in your relationship where you're so comfortable with one another and the trust is truly there, and you can identify that there is a separation between making love and just having sex, and that you don't necessarily have to coexist, that you can have sexual relations outside of a relationship and not be confined to only having sex with your one partner. And there's so many people, and I find that it's way more common with queer people, obviously, because we're like sex addicts. With jokes aside, I think it's because we truly explore it. Whereas like I think
there's like a confidence in owning who you are that I wish more hetero people had. Do you know what I mean?
I agree.
Because it's like discovering that part of self, I don't think hetero people often do until, or if ever,
And I think part of that stems from not just exploring and loving oneself and being so confident in who you are, but also that faux pas and also lack of education of that this exists and that this is okay. And I mean, I know we've talked about this, and on our podcast, and with Jen's post and what we talk about is like redefining masculinity. And it's that like being a man doesn't mean that you have to be X, Y, and Z. You know, you could be a man and be masculine and be feminine, or a woman be masculine and feminine as well. And again, in kind of that ideology of like that there's a spectrum. It's not just these like check boxes. There really is different parts of the spectrum that you can fall on. And I think if hetero people really just took the chance and had the confidence to explore their sexualities and be so scared, they would really get to learn so much more about themselves, about their partners, and about how much fun you can have.
All about fun, that's for sure. Life is too short to not have fun. So might I ask, Steven, like fluidity for people, sometimes people will say, you know, it complicates things or it creates mess in a relationship. You know, what would you say about that?
I would say it does when you're not secure, when you don't have that trust in your relationship. And trust really is important. And it's interesting because as I have conversations with some of my other like gay friends and queer friends in general, I think a common denominator is sometimes you either hit like a roadblock or an issue that comes up in your relationship that triggers you to have the conversation to then realize, okay, I have needs outside of this relationship, and what can we do to communicate and express those feelings with each other so that you can kind of go outside of that. And I mean, part of that I can relate to, like I reached a tough point in my relationship where, you know, we felt the need to expand outside of that. And then we were like, okay, like let's be open and introduce other partners into our sex life. And it was something that, to be honest, looking back, and maybe that's also because I was closeted for many years, etc., and brought up in a different way, that I could not wrap my head around, you know, my partner being with someone else. And I guess you could even say that I was like the jealous partner type, but I think that just stemmed from the idea that like I couldn't be with multiple partners, or that, you know, if my partner was enjoying something with someone else without me, that was like betrayed. Or I'd be hurt, or like worry that like if they did something better with someone, are they going to then leave me because they found something better?
Yeah. So how did you deal with that?
It's about communicating and realizing that like you have this connection that you strongly believe that like you can't have with anyone else. Now, I also believe that you should set parameters.
I was just going to say there needs to be boundaries in place 100%. For sure.
And I don't think they should be seen as like rules or restrictions, but more so just not enabling the situation from having things that could be triggering. For example, not just for myself, but I've heard people set boundaries like, and I say like no strings attached, like don't exchange information with this person. Don't keep in touch with these other sex partners. It's kind of like you have a one night stand and you're kind of go off. Other people are open to like the regular sidekick, let's call them.
The sidekick being the sidekick. Pieces, yeah.
Whatever you want to call them.
The ongoing.
Where it's kind of like you've both have a mutual understanding that there's no relationship potential and it's just sex, but you have good fun when you're together because of whatever level of intimacy that you're able to achieve together. And everyone's different. For me, I think it's undeniable that there are little things that can trigger mishaps in your relationship and misunderstandings or leading the other person on. And a lot of that comes from the fact of like not communicating. If you're not being honest with the other person, then there's grounds for miscommunication, which could lead to misunderstanding. And in the end, one person being hurt. And when someone gets hurt, that's typically what leads to like problems. Whether it's like that person's like, I need to get this guy back, so I'm going to go behind his back and tell
the crazy
partner,
wheel starts.
Blah, blah, blah. Exactly. And you see that in every type of relationship, heteronormative, gay, queer, you know, whatever, you see it. Because as soon as hurt and emotions is triggered into the mix, that's when things can really go rocky. But I believe if you're honest and you're able to just communicate, express your feelings to one another and to the other partners that you're having relations with. You're honest with them. Like, you tell them you're in an open relationship. You're not looking for anything outside of that. This is simply just sex. Then you don't leave any room for error and like I said, misjudgment.
Yeah, for sure. With fluidity comes, again, like a lot of questions. I think it's hard for people to not have a label on something, an identity, a straight identity, no pun intended, but you know what I mean? I'm not doing that on purpose. Like an identity associated. What would you say to someone to help really explain what that sort of love means, Steven? Because I feel like not enough people really understand it.
I mean, what I would tell people is to really just try not to focus on, like I said, those check boxes, and more about those feelings. And first and foremost, learn to love yourself. If you're not confident in yourself, if you're not grounded in, you know, your sexuality or what you believe it is, then there's always going to be fear. You know, it's so crazy, you know, during my coming out journey, when you have these friends, and then as soon as they realize that you're gay, or they find out that you're gay, then they're like, oh, well, you know, was all of that a sham? Were you coming on to me? Those times we shared a bed, were you doing stuff to me? And it's like, no. And I can't believe that you would ever think that of me, because at the end of the day, we were just friends, you know? And you see that on the other side of the fence too, with like women, etc. So it's sad that that's where people's minds go. Yeah. But going back to your question about like labels, I think that's just something that's ingrained in us. I think a lot of it is driven by society and just the fact that we feel the need to have labels on everything. And it's actually so interesting to see how fashion is evolving, and like more men are inclined to start wearing women's clothes and vice versa. And I hope that eventually we can get to a place where, similar to what I've been saying of like having this spectrum, we can just have like a variety of clothes that's out there. And instead of calling it like men's and women's department, maybe be like, I can't say that I have an answer. I'm definitely not an expert in all this and I haven't quite figured it out, but I would say more like masculine styles or silhouettes versus feminine. And I think there's no denying that our body shapes are different and we have different requirements, etc. But if you're someone who is a cis female and wants to explore like the more masculine wear, you have the ability to do so and just create more
that does work for your body. Exactly. Let's just say, you know, for sure.
And little things that like I'm now starting to see collections evolve, and it's interesting. I had the opportunity last year to sit down with Claire, the new creative director of Uniqlo, who came from Dior, and I was talking to her about like, I love that Uniqlo is really pushing that kind of like gender neutral silhouette, and you're now seeing so many men shop in the women's department and vice versa. And I said, my number one issue with pants, I love women's pants, by the way, they make your bum look so nice. But
that's why you look so good in your pants.
But like, why don't we have women's pockets? Like, why are women's pockets like this deep and then men's are like down to here? And I'm like, okay, I get it, women have purses and men typically don't. But I'm like, that's such the number one thing that women always tell me is like, I hate that there's no pockets in like dresses and in this. So whoever at some point was the architect to decide that women should not have pockets is, you know,
you're missing out. You'd make people a lot happier if we had deeper pockets.
Right? You wouldn't have things falling out of your pocket, etc.
It's true.
So, I mean, that's one thing that I think could be easily changed that would make it more accessible and usable for men. Because everything else, I mean, there are certain things, like I said, that, you know, our body shapes are different, that don't always sit as comfortable. Right. But sometimes you're willing to sacrifice it. But you could design,
say, like flares, let's just say, for a men's body with the same kind of intent or shape as women's, let's just say.
Exactly. And there's certain things that like
Flares were a really bad example. I don't know why I said flares. I hate myself for just saying flares.
No, it's fine. Honestly, like one great thing that I noticed is like hips. Women tend to have more hip than a man. Like it's just how our body shapes are biologically. So when we pick up a women's style pant, typically there's like more just fabric in that area for a man that puts it on. But the great thing is that like Uniqlo has built in this alteration system into their stores where you can actually get it altered. So you can tell them like, can you take in the sides here? Yeah, and with every purchase, I don't know if there's like a minimum spend. I'm no Uniqlo ambassador by any means, but I have used the service quite a bit. You can do hems, you can shorten sleeves, you can take it. They don't do like major reconstruction like a full-on tailor, but they can do quite a bit. So if you're shopping at Uniqlo, make sure to use the alteration service.
Okay, there you go. Learning new things every day from Steven. I'm telling you, it's going to continue. Steven, you mentioned your journey, you know, in your self-discovery. Can you talk a little bit about that and like how you grew up and whatnot and what led to you coming out?
Yeah. I mean, what led to me coming out is definitely just self-discovery. But in terms of my journey, I mean, being raised in a very traditional family, very religious, like I originally grew up as Catholic, so we'd go to church like twice a week.
Yeah,
like Tuesdays or Wednesdays. God, I can't remember. I tried to blur that part of my life out. But I know it was like a weekday, and then we would also go on Sundays, and then like I was an altar boy, so I went to practice and stuff, and I was also in the choir and whatnot. So very, very practicing, and like my grandparents went, my parents went, my aunts and uncle, like our whole family was very involved, and then as I grew up, then eventually I actually had some family that introduced me to the Christian church, and specifically the Pentecostal church, and I became more active, like checking that out and seeing how it was different. And I was most attracted to the gospel singing and like the choirs.
I was just gonna say I'm Catholic. You know, I say like a loose Catholic because I really like parts of Buddhism that I identify with, and I'm more spiritual. So there's like different layers to things. But all that to say is I've always wanted to go to a Baptist church because there is nothing more joyful, I think, than gospel singers and being like a part of that. I actually was at, this is terrible, but I was at a viewing and they were, I think, evangelists. And so at the funeral, like viewing, they had all these singers come out, and it was like, as devastating as the funeral was, it was so joyful and so beautiful, and they sang so beautifully. I was like, wow, I want to experience like a whole service like that.
And in those, I don't even know what the term is, iterations of Christianity or stands of Christianity. They tend to believe in it's a celebration of life, not mourning.
Right.
So that's why it is so joyful. But their dedication to serving, and that's what it is. It's a service to God in being in the choir. And they truly dedicated. Like once I became part of the Pentecostal church, like I was at church like 4 nights a week practicing, and like our choir director was constantly coming up with things and like new songs, and we sang in Spanish and in English. So
I can't believe I didn't really know this. Do you still sing?
No.
We've got microphones.
In the shower. You know, Francis,
I want to go with karaoke with you. That's what I want to do.
But I do love to sing, and I think it was my way to express myself and really do something that I loved. And I knew I couldn't pursue it as a career, so it was just something that I loved to do on my spare time. And then eventually got so dedicated to this, and I was part of it for like 6 years. And I never forget, like the first time I actually got to lead the service, and I was like trembling.
Wow.
But it was like such a beautiful feeling, and like there's still to this day, and I'll say I'm not as religious these days. I've definitely evolved, but anytime one of those songs comes on, I like, takes you right back to that feeling that you have. And there is something that is undeniable of how amazing it makes you feel to be in that presence and to sing those songs that really just are so well rooted and in so much positivity, and to be surrounded by these people that are also like-minded and so joyful and so powerful with their voices. And I remember there was a church, Prayer Palace, on Finch and 400, and if you ever get the chance to go to one of their services, they have a massive choir, and their choir is incredible.
Really?
It's like one of those Tyler Perry movies, you know, where you see like
totally.
the crowd.
Okay, I need to go. I want to check it out.
It's beautiful. If you go, let me know.
I will. It's a date. Done and done. Done and done.
But it's such a beautiful experience, and so, like I said, I got caught up in the church there, and my partner, who later became my wife, was a member of the church, and she's the one that kind of got me into it. And
how old were you? Give me like an age.
Like in grade 9. So like,
okay, so like what, 14, 15?
14-ish. Yeah, like right after elementary. That's when I kind of got introduced to that whole circle, and I was hanging out with my cousins from that side of my family who were part of that circle as well. And like some of my aunts, they were going to like a Brazilian Baptist church. So I had started getting exposed to Christianity, and then met her. And she kind of introduced me to all of her friends. And that's the beautiful thing about these communities, that can also be a double-edged sword, but they really make you feel welcome. And it's exactly that, a community. Like, they support each other, they hang out all the time, they do everything together, and we became such a tight-knit community. And I kind of fell into that, and then, like I said, started part of the choir. Excuse me, I was part of the choir. I was helping out with the media division. Like, our church was pretty big. It was like 1,500 members.
Wow.
And eventually it grew, and I think it was like 5,000, if I'm not mistaken. And I helped them build like a media division. So it's funny how far back.
Of course you did. Yeah, that's
like,
so funny.
We set up camera systems. We were streaming like all over the world. We had live streaming.
It's very progressive at that time, I'm sure, too.
At so far back, like, we figured out how to do YouTube live streaming so that we can stream to El Salvador, because our pastor was from El Salvador, so he had a huge community there.
Wow.
And in Guatemala and whatnot. And then we actually had a partnership with Prayer Palace and a couple of other big congregations where we would like share resources. And then I became like the media director and was helping them with their website and all that stuff. Excuse me. And so I was very involved. It's kind of what I wanted to get to. And needless to say, I mean, I opened up to my partner and whatnot, and things got back to the community, and it was hell. As I'm sure you can imagine, like, it's not an easy conversation.
No.
And especially within a marriage, because fast forward, we got married. I was very young when I got married.
How old were you when you got married?
Turning 18.
That's so young. Do you feel like the church's influence kind of made you get married young?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the church's influence. Part of it was like escaping my family, and like we had a lot of, let's call it, bad blood. And we were arguing a lot and had a lot of issues, and it was my way to escape.
Yeah.
Was to get married.
Start fresh. It's like start a new chapter.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt like for her it was similar. Like, it was just our way to kind of to start our own chapter, so to speak. But then, fast forward in the relationship, we're married. Like, we were so involved in the church, but then I had some issues in our relationship and whatnot, and like I said, people started to like say to her like, "Oh, we think he's gay," and and that obviously created a lot of turmoil in our relationship. And we had our own understandings and whatnot, and people always ask like, "Well, did you love her? Like, was that all a lie?" Of course I loved her, and we had a relationship. And I appreciate everything she did for me, and I tried to support her the best that I can. And I can truthfully say that there was never any infidelity, because I was so invested, not just in the relationship, but in my beliefs. You know, that sexuality was not even a thing that crossed my mind. I'll be very honest that, like, I don't want to say naively that I didn't know what sexuality was, but I never talked about it. I never thought about it. I didn't have anyone in my family who was queer at that stage. And then, interestingly enough, I never talked about this, but like, I had a couple of interactions, let's say, at a young age, like 14, 15, that now looking back, I'm like, these were questionable. These other guys were obviously poking the bear, so to speak. And but I didn't even like react to it because, again, I was so sheltered. I was like in this box, like, you know, men and women, you don't think outside that box. Did I ever question like why I like to hang out with more of my female cousins versus my male cousins? I never fit in with the guys. I didn't like sports. I never questioned that. Like, I remember actually as a child, like, playing more with my girl cousins and dolls, and my dad would like smack the dolls out of my hands and be like, dolls are not for boys. Like, you have to go play with the balls and stuff like figuratively now.
The irony.
That sounds funny.
Okay.
But it was so crazy to now look back and think like that
was indicative of like how,
didn't even realize it. Like, I remember one time putting on a skirt and dancing with my cousins outside to the music and like not even thinking about it, like so innocently, so to speak. And then fast forward when I can't even remember what it was, but I think it was like I was exposed to like gay porn, and I think that was my first trigger where I was like, okay, I think I really am like attracted to men. But to be very honest, it's not to say that I was never not attracted to women, because like,
well, two things can be true.
Yeah. And I think that's the idea, that kind of going back to what we were saying, everyone's thoughts are it's either you're gay or you're straight. And it's like, no, there really is an in between. And I mean, I can attest to that. Like, I've heard stories from some of my gay friends that like will say, you know, in their closeted years when they were like dating women, that they would like jerk off in the bathroom before going to have sex with their girlfriend because they couldn't get hard. And I'm like, I never had that issue. Like, I was actually attracted to her and to other girls that I had been with before that. And yeah, so it was very confusing to me. I didn't really know. And then
that is confusing when you don't have anyone around you that you see is like that or 100%. Does talk about that. It's very isolating to go through that. And
to not have anyone to turn to be able to understand that, or to have to ask questions, or to be like, hey, I'm feeling this way, or I'm thinking this, or like, what does this mean? What do I do? You know, like there was so much unknown to me, and I didn't have anyone that I can confide in to talk to about it. So, but I admitted that I was feeling some of those things, and like I went to like conversion camp and like
really
did like all of these support programs that they have to try to.
Did you do that because other people said you should do that?
Because I felt like I was sinning. Because like I said, I was a devoted Christian. Like, I really did believe that like we were talking about, like it's very clear in the Bible that homosexuality exists. And that it's like it's positioned as if it's like a sin and a curiosity, and that you shouldn't feed into that curiosity.
But it doesn't mean that it wasn't happening or that it didn't exist.
Exactly. So I think for me, it was like I was looking for a way to manage it, because I didn't want to be a hypocrite, especially serving in the church, because they are very adamant that like you have to be perfect, you know, to be part of it. Although you then realize that
there's a lot of imperfect in religion, that's for sure.
Yes.
Can I ask you, like, what happens at conversion camp? It's still wild to me. Like, I know this still exists more in the US probably than here, but it's like wild to me that exists.
Yeah. And it's like an education, like they're essentially like drilling into you that homosexuality is wrong, that, you know, God made man and a woman and you're intended to have sex and procreate, and like anything outside of that is sinful, and that it's normal for us to have curiosities, but we shouldn't feed into it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then it's like a lot of prayer and support groups and whatnot, and some of it is beautiful. I won't deny. Like, I really did enjoy my time as a Christian, and there's something so magical about feeling so supported. It's just so sad that a lot of it is rooted in negativity and hypocrisy. And I mean, we're not here to talk about religion, but it's an crazy system that really is cult-like, and and brainwashing to a certain degree.
In every religion, just across the board. I think a lot of people feel that way. You're not alone in saying that.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, it just reaffirmed to me that, like, if I wanted to be a good Christian, that I had to, you know,
abide by those rules.
And I think in tandem, my wife was like, okay, I'm going to do everything to make sure that I'm like satisfying his needs so that I don't have to, so he doesn't have to be thinking about these other things.
Yeah.
You know? But then fast forward, things got really toxic. I mean, my career also took off. So I was too busy for church, so to speak. And our relationship got toxic. Like, her career took a bad turn. She was unemployed. That created negativity. I always say finances could be the root of a lot of evil.
Not could be. They definitely are. I can definitely relate and understand that. And I think a lot of people in many relationships would say, I think it's like the number 2 reason why people get divorced or break up. Yeah. For sure.
And a lot of time it's just the shame that comes with it that doesn't allow you to communicate with your partner. That is where it all stems from, in my opinion. But
shame around like not bringing enough to the table, or
the debts that you accumulate as a result, and a mix of the two, right? And not being able to squash it while it's still early, and then it starts to, because the challenge with debt and financial problems is that they snowball so crazily. And a lot of times, by the time you think to like raise your hand and try to fix it, it's already out of control. And then at that point, sometimes like the relationship is so damaged by it that there's no turning back. In my situation, I mean, I don't want to harp on it too much because I'm very happy with the fact that we've been able to come to terms with this, where we ended off in our relationship, and we are now successfully divorced and have turned that page. And I don't want to continue to bring things up for her as well, because I know it was hard on both of us, but
for sure,
ultimately she was in a tough situation because she lost her job, and I was, you know, like pulling the full slack, but it wasn't like a short period. It was like 6 years on and off, and she couldn't figure out what she wanted to do, and I was the sole responsible person for paying for things, and it got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't want to just be your cash grab forever, and I want to be able to support you so you can stand on your own 2 feet, and then we figure out if this is making sense, and if it's not, then I'm going to go my way and you go yours. And then she kind of turned against me and threatened to tell my family that I was gay and like all this other stuff. And it was like the worst possible time in my family's life, because my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer, and this is the last thing I need is my parents now stressing about my sexuality and blah blah blah. So bad time in my life. But fast forward, I was able to come out to my family, and honestly,
so you were kind of like pressured into coming out, but 100%. You're saying it was it worked out.
Now looking back, I'm like, if she hadn't, I would have probably dragged my feet a lot longer. And I think that vulnerability and the fact that my parents were at such a weak point maybe allowed them to be more considerate, and just they had bigger fish to fry, so to speak, that they didn't focus so much on my sexuality. They just cared that I was there to help. Well,
I think the number one concern for any human being across the board is like health. Number one comes above all other things. It's like,
and even though like I said earlier, we didn't have a great relationship standing at that point, I definitely realized that like, okay, I need to put everything aside and like help my mom get through this, because, you know, none of the bickering matters if she's not here. And I don't want to end on this term, essentially. And so I kind of stepped in, and my dad didn't necessarily agree, but like I was there. And yeah, and then fast forward, like I was there for my mom. They were so understanding. Like, I'll never forget my mom saying to me, like, you know what? I don't care. I just want you to be happy and live your life. And
that's the best thing a parent could say, I think.
That's all you want.
Yeah.
That's all you want. I mean, I think now looking back, I realized that like that's what every human being craves, is to be loved and to be accepted, to allow you to be who you authentically are. And, you know, I'm so thankful now looking back to say that I am, you know, I'm authentically living my true life. I have, and it's so funny because I have this conversation often. People are like, oh, you know, you come off as so confident and this and that. And I'm like, because now I can finally say that I am who I am, and I have no reservations. I'm not pretending to be something that I'm not. I'm truly and authentically me. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to get to this point in my life. And it wasn't an overnight, like, you come out and all of a sudden you're,
Well, that's what I was going to ask is, like through the years moving forward and kind of discovering yourself more and more, how did you become more self-assured and really be solidified in who you are?
Yeah. I mean, some of it is self-discovery, and I mean, that's such a vague statement, but
what does that mean? Self-discovery? Trying different
testing
things?
the waters.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I mean, as I'm sure happens to a lot of people after a breakup, you're like, screw this. I'm going to go wild for a while.
I'm trying everything.
Right? You can imagine at that point in my life, like coming out, I was married for 9 years.
That's a long time.
A long time. Coming out of a very young relationship, right? Because I started, like, I was dating her since I was in my teens.
Yeah, wow.
And then ended up getting married and was together for a long time. And then come out and I'm like, this is my chance to go wild. Maybe more wild than I should have.
No, never.
Right?
I'm coming out. That's what I just feel like. And then it's you walking down the street being like, yes, 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 yes.
Everything and everything. But it was...
That's the best learning.
100%. What I should have known is that you have to be safe to some degree.
Of course.
Especially, like, I think that was the number one thing my mom was so concerned about when she first came out. And when I first came out to her, she was like, and I preface this by saying, because I know this has come up in the past when I've told this story, where people are like, she said to me, oh, I don't want you to die of AIDS. And
I think that's a generational reaction.
And it's a misconception.
To that, for sure.
Because you don't die of AIDS, you die of HIV. And I'm not even an expert on that subject. And I encourage anyone who's listening to this to really familiarize yourself with HIV. And it's actually not common for you to die from HIV these days. Thankfully, we've gotten to a point in the world where there are treatments and ways to, become undetectable and whatnot, which essentially is kind of like not having it. but there's still this idea of like, oh, if you're gay, you're prone to getting HIV and then you're going to die. And then the world is, coming to an end kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not the case, but there are a lot of preventative measures out there. There's PrEP, which you can take. And I believe there's an injection and a pill form that you can take to be preventative, and obviously using protection and stuff like that. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just like, I just want to get on all the apps and do all the exploring. And I did.
There you go.
I had a couple of scares, like I said.
I think everybody can relate to that, though. I think it's like when you first become really sexually active, like that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Whether you're hetero, queer, like everybody has a thing.
And then the worst part was like, my family doctor was my family's doctor for like my whole life. So I'm like, I can't go to my family doctor.
Yeah, like, I need a new doctor.
I need a new doctor. So you like walk into a random walk-in clinic, and like at walk-in clinics, they're not very considerate of like your feelings. They're like, this is the problem. Yeah. You're a hoe.
But don't you want that? You kind of want them to give it to you the real. Right? Yeah.
It's so true. But also you're like, okay, well, like, how do I deal with this? Right? So it's a challenge. And I remember coming home with the papers. I'm like hiding them in my pocket so that nobody can see them. Yeah. I didn't want anybody to know. And I mean, for context, I didn't have anything, but I was worried about it. And I had to go do blood work because I'm like, damn it. Like, so what happened is like, I slept with this guy, and then I get a random message like 2 weeks later saying like, hey, we slept together like 2 weeks ago, and I just tested positive for so-and-so, and like, you need to get checked. And I'm like, oh my God. And like, I ran to the clinic and got tested. And then thankfully, it's the longest like 3 days of my life waiting for those results to come back, and then they come back, and then it was like negative, and I was like,
but then it changed your perspective moving forward. I'm sure you were a lot more careful and asked certain questions.
Every person that you hook up with, you're like, okay, I want your bill of health. Pee in this cup.
We will wait until
once it comes clear, then we can sleep. No. But then 2 weeks goes by and you forget about that again, and then you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's just like how life is. But I got to learn the hard way, the good way, the fun way. I don't know. The many different ways. And I remember people asking like, oh, like, what's your type? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I'm still figuring it out. And it's evolved so much through the years. And again, I think there's this saying of like, you don't know what you don't know. And it's so true because sometimes you think you know, but until you experience it or you go through it, that's when you really get to know.
For sure.
So that's why I always say, like, I do have a couple of friends that are hetero, and we've had this conversation about exploring your sexuality. Yeah. And I'm like, honestly, I'm not telling you to go out and have sex with a random guy, but I'm like, think about exploring it. Like I know guys that will say that they've had like a threesome with another guy, and they get off on seeing their partner with someone else and whatnot. So there's so many
nuances to sexuality.
And like you were saying earlier, it's not just like gay, straight, queer, like whatever. Like the reason why the acronym continues to grow, the LGBTQIA plus, is because I think we're starting to realize that there really are so many different, I don't even know what the word is, variables or ranges on this spectrum that you can identify with. And who am I, or who are we to tell people that they're not what they say they are, right? Like, I think it's oneself's choice to discover and to call it whatever you want to be. And if you want to be non-binary or have no label, then that's okay too, you know, because I think once society gets to a point where we can just allow people to be who they are.
I think it's as simple as that, you know, and really understanding it's like everybody wants love and to be accepted, period. No matter who, what, where you come from or what you identify as. I think if more people, my hope is that more people come from that perspective to be more welcoming. You know, like I just, like it hurts me to see the hate sometimes that is out there and how awful people can be. Like, have you, besides like when you came out, have you ever experienced anything like that? Especially because you travel a lot, actually, Steven. So I imagine that also different places that you go to, like I have also gay friends who say very openly, like, I'll never go there because I don't feel safe. Like I don't want to open myself up to something like that. Like, I can't imagine. I feel very fortunate and I'm privileged to not even have that thought in my head. And I take it for granted, not realizing that that's something that people consider before going somewhere, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. My official coming out was like during COVID. I actually did a campaign with Prime for a show that was called It's a Sin. That was coming out of the UK, and it was like, if I'm not mistaken, 6 main characters, and they're all like young adolescents, and the story is about like their varying coming out stories.
Oh, interesting.
And whatnot. And so part of the application process for this campaign was for you to share your coming out story, and they were trying to pick people that related with one of the characters.
The people on the show.
And then I got to do an interview with that character and tell him my story, and then him share his story.
That's a really brilliant.
It was so fascinating.
Yeah.
And then I told my coming out story in a post, which is I think one of the ones that I've shared with you. And that video and various snippets of it was like amplified, and the amount of messages that I got was unreal. Some good, but a whole lot of bad. Like,
really?
The most disturbing things that people said was wild.
Didn't you read them all?
Not all of them, thankfully, but some of them, I mean, they come up on your phone on the notifications,
you
right?
can't
At
not
that point,
see, you can't unsee it once it's there. Yeah.
And then curiosity, right?
Yeah.
The root of a lot of evil. And that's not even the worst of it, because I think I have developed a thick skin towards the robots, as I call them, or the trolls. It was more so the people from my life that would reach out.
Because they know you, so that's the most hurtful.
And others that, like, I went to elementary school with, teachers from my school, people from my church.
Really?
From, like, my whole life, right? People who knew me when I was married, and, like, reaching out saying that I betrayed them, that I lied, that deceit and this and that, and how dare I, and I should be ashamed, and blah, 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 right? Like, it was just, I literally was in bed for 2 weeks, and I didn't want to get out.
I'm sorry.
I was so miserable. I was like in this dark hole, and it was like,
and
as
here
soon
it
as I
is,
started
meant
to feel
to be
better,
like liberating and something that, you know, gives you confidence to step into who you are, and then it's just like shit on. That's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But what made it all worth it was the positive messages. Like, I had so many conversations with people like, I'm going through the same thing right now. I don't know how you did it. Listening to this really has given me the strength to talk to my parents and tell them my story and how I feel. And the one thing I told myself was, like, if only one person can benefit from this, then it'll all be worth it. And thankfully there was not just one. There was like a lot.
And I bet people continue to say that to you, no?
Time.
Yeah.
And I still get messages. Even from that one video, I get comments and DMs all the time of people like, this was so powerful, you know, changed my life, you know, like so many different things that they've said. And that inspires me to want to continue, to want to be able to continue to share my story and to encourage people to discover themselves and love themselves for exactly who they are. And just have no preservations. And I remember the first time I tried to do like TV and stuff like that, like I did a segment and I was like so nervous, very shy. And like this was before my coming out. And then I was back on, I think this was CHCH at the time, like months after my coming out and whatnot. And one of the producers saying to me like, that was such a great episode. Like, you were so lively, you were so personable, and like just felt so authentic. Like, what changed? Like, were you taking classes or something? And I was like, honestly, I came out. And like, we had such a great heart to heart, and it was so beautiful. Nice. And it's just amazing to finally be at a point in my life where I can honestly and truthfully say that like I was just being me. Because like, you know how, I mean, you just said you don't know this, but can you imagine growing up being 12 years old and you're just trying to be a kid? And I remember my mom saying like, you know, why do you move your hands that way? Why can't you walk like the other boys? You know, why don't you want to go play with the guys at the park and then play basketball? Like, and I'm
you just gotta let your kid be what they want. Like, if they want to put on a dress, let them put on a dress.
Like, why does it matter?
They want to do this, like, who cares? Let them do what they want to do. They're gonna tell you. Exactly. And that's what I feel like more than anything. Like, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, and from, again, my gay friends, that tell me, like, it was like I was born gay, but I just didn't know it. Like, throughout my life, you know, I was fed certain societal norms, nuclear family, blah, 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 that like this is then what I was led to believe until I really like realized, oh, I'm unhappy. Like, this isn't really who I am. So like, strip away, again, all that pressure in society. Like, imagine if parents were like, yeah, sure, you can wear that. What do you want? Sure, I'm going to buy you that. Or we can enroll you in this and dance or whatever it is. It's like, let your kids tell you who they want to be. You don't need to worry about anything other than that. Yeah.
And I had a great conversation recently with someone that I'm trying to shape into a story in some way or shape. But to summarize it, it was just a really great perspective on like rules were meant to be broken. And society has been built on these foundational rules. I mean, don't get me wrong, like some that are very important, like don't steal and kill.
Don't steal and kill anyone.
But others where they're built on this idea of restricting society to be a certain way and to live a certain way. And I feel like if from the start we educated kids in schools about the range, there would be less want to go and explore and go outside of those restrictions. So what I mean by that is like sex and drugs and alcohol. If they were exposed to it to a certain degree and educated on it, then it's less about like, oh, I need to go try this because I'm not allowed to, and more about do it safely, because the reality is they're going to do it anyways.
Yeah. I have heard and seen parents say, you know, I'm uncomfortable with the curriculum of teaching kids this too young. They can't understand this. It's confusing them. What do you say to that?
I mean, I'm definitely not an expert, so I'll preface that.
Yeah, this is from your personal experience. I want you to speak from personal.
100%. And what I would say is that the reality is the sooner you start to enable a kid to think outside the box and to really be familiar with the things around them instead of sheltering them into the little bit that you want to give them, the sooner you allow them to broaden their knowledge and awareness that it exists. Because, and this is a really sad example, but I'll give it to you. I know at a young age, one of my school friends was sexually abused. And she didn't even know that it was happening, that it was wrong, because she had never been educated that that was a thing.
Right.
To her, it was just like this man touching her. But she didn't know that it was wrong because she had not been educated on it. So I think if you knew a lot more about that as an
earlier on,
and what's right and what's wrong. I'm not saying don't teach kids that it's wrong to do X or Y, right? Or that it's okay to go have sex when you're 9 years old, because it's not. But I think it's important for them to know, hey, this is your body. This is how it works. And one day you're going to be able to use it for this, this, and that. I think the idea of having this veil that like kids shouldn't know about sex and what those things are and how they're going to be used is just restricting them from being able to know right from wrong and when something is being wrong, done wrong against them, and when not. And other example is like, you know, I remember, I mean, when we were in school, because we're similar age, like they weren't teaching very much about like sex in school.
I was just going to say, I was so naive because like I said, I went to school, a Catholic elementary school, high school, and I never really like talked about it with my parents. Like it wasn't a conversation that we had. I think my mom had tried a couple of times and I was just like, no, I don't want to hear it. I'm weird, awkward, I don't want to, you know? But in saying that, like, I don't think that I was really even able to discover myself until like my late 20s, honestly, because of what was like ingrained constantly in my head. And there was a lot of like fear and unknown and self-consciousness and all of that really is, I mean, I feel like I still, you know, and like shedding what that is and really leaning into, but yourself. But it's tough to unlearn things. Yeah. It's harder to unlearn things than it is to learn things.
100%. 100%. And that's where, you know, kind of going back to our conversation of the coming out and like, and whatnot, I always took my coming out journey with a grain of salt because I feel for my family because that's what they were taught. Like I remember having a conversation with my grandparents and like my grandfather just saying like, this is how we were raised. This is how we were taught. Like they didn't understand. And at that late age, I didn't want to be the reason to have to create turmoil for them or make things more difficult as a result. But thankfully they were very understanding to a certain degree. It was more so the worry of like what the societal backlash was going to be was more so their concern and more so looking
like
out for me.
You. I was just going to say their concern was for you. And I think a lot of parents have said like, you know, it's harder for my kid if they're going to be queer or gay. They're going to have a harder time in life.
And they're not wrong. They are going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
But by preparing them, like by covering it up isn't going to fix it. It's actually going to make it worse. So allowing them to discover themselves and feel accepted is going to empower them to become more familiar in their own skin and to learn those things sooner and build that thicker skin and resiliency
for sure.
To be able to get through it. Because the reality is, I mean, I hope that we have a not so distant future where that doesn't exist, but the reality is that it still does. And the sooner we prepare people for it, the better. And the more we unlearn those bad learnings or incorrect and relearn this new reality that we've discovered and continue to discover and familiarize ourselves with, the better it is. And I do feel for people, you know, I have this conversation all the time as someone who tries to be very progressive and very careful with my language and how I explain things. I find myself all the time being like, oh, is this the right acronym? Like, am I addressing people the right way?
100%. And that's how we started this conversation of like fear. Like, I think a lot of the acceptance comes with fear and not wanting to offend anyone. Even myself, I'm like, my intentions are only good. And I might say something wrong or that is maybe offensive to someone, but that's not my intention is to learn and to say it right and to be accepting. And that's part of what, honestly, like the podcast is even all about, is because when you have more conversations like this that are open and honest and you're sharing, like that's how the world gets better.
I agree.
Right?
I agree. And I mean, I think these conversations are so important because it's the only way we're going to learn together and grow and evolve. And, kudos to you for championing those conversations and providing a safe space for people to be able to do it, because there's not a lot of them out there, unfortunately.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being the person to share that with. Like, thank you for making me I feel comfortable with you to ask these questions and to sit across from you. And, and I'm so grateful that you are also for your vulnerability and experiences and sharing that with me, because going through life, it's nice to have good people and continue to learn and be better.
And we learn together.
Exactly.
And as we familiarize ourselves with it, and that's the reality, that like we're all still self-discovering. We're still figuring things out. Society is still trying to figure out what are the best ways to, address people, and the reality is that I think labels will never fully disappear. Yeah. I think they'll evolve. And like we were talking about in fashion, I think that's going to take some time to catch up. Part of it is this, it's being held back, from what I believe at least, by marketing and the commercial world, because it's not easy to market something that you don't know how to put a label on. Yeah. Right? Like we've had this conversation about fashion, right? It's like, well, if we're not going to call it a men and women's department, what are we going to call it? Yeah. And what buckets are we going to put? How are we going to organize clothes? I'm like, what about just organizing it by silhouette? Why do we need to have a department, right? Can it just be tops and pants? And just have variety in there and let people gravitate to whatever they want to gravitate. Why do we have to tell people what they need to wear? If that person wants to wear a skirt, let them. If they want to wear a t-shirt, let them. If they want to wear pants, let them do that too. Why does there have to be this for that person and that for this person? Like, I think once we allow ourselves to get to a place where we let every decision be driven by oneself versus what people tell you that you need to do, I think we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, it's like you gotta, and it starts from doing the work yourself to really, discover who you are. Yeah. And the sooner that you solidify that, the easier and more accepting and open and better I think humans will be.
And like we were saying earlier, a lot of that comes from communication. Having those communications.
It all comes back.
Right? Yeah, it's so important. Like I think in a relationship, like I said, I'm no expert, but I've heard a lot of things from like sex experts. There's a great expert from Toronto. Her name's Jessica. We've had her on the pod a couple times. She's also a Tinder ambassador, and she talks a lot about like how people in relationships, it's so funny that they're so scared to express to one another sometimes when they're having sex on like what they like and what they don't like, because they're afraid to upset the partner. But what in reality is, if you were to express to one another,
imagine how much better it would be.
And interestingly enough,
what a concept,
right? What a concept.
It's so simple, but it's so hard for people.
And something that she was bringing up, it's like, it was interesting. Because a topic of conversation that came up is like, well, why does sometimes sex, like in infidelity, feel better than in that relationship? And it's because you have nothing to hold back, because you're not afraid to hurt that person. Right. You're just there for truly the sexual pleasure. So if someone doesn't feel good, you're going to tell them. Yeah. And you don't care.
You're not doing what you're here for.
Yeah. No, not like that, like this, And then you achieve what you both want, and if you just put that same idea into your own like actual relationships, then you might be able to achieve that. And then a lot of that then eventually comes to like, once you achieve that level of security in that relationship is when you're then able to explore. And like I was saying, I've met a couple of couples that are like, I guess you call them swingers or whatever it is that people call them these days. But I just call it couples that are able to explore their sexuality. And like I said, there's no specific label. And I've been approached by some of them. Like I never forget during Fashion Week.
Look at you, of course. Listen to him. Look at him.
This one couple came up to me, and never forget, is like at the one restaurant,
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Hazelton, and it was like a fashion closing night party, and I was leaving, and it was like this gorgeous couple, and it was an older British man, like brown guy, and his wife was so stunning, had these piercing green eyes, and he just like stopped me and was like, "Oh, do you want to come have drinks with us upstairs?" And I wasn't really getting it.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and I was like so confused because he was with her, obviously.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, do we know each other from somewhere? He's like, no, I've just been seeing you from across the bar, and we'd love to hang out, get to know you. And then it clued in, and then I was like, oh no, sorry, like I'm in a relationship. And then she was like, that doesn't matter. Do they want to come too?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, no, I don't think they'd be into that. And she was like, honey, no, I don't think he's interested. And obviously he was a little drunk, so he was being a little pushy. But I was like, no, I appreciate it, but not today. And
flattered.
Like, I'm really flattered, but, have fun.
Yeah.
But honestly, I was so kind of shocked, but really enamored by, one, his confidence to just approach me like that. And then two, the fact that this actually exists.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, like there actually are hetero couples out there. I mean, not so hetero, but fluid couples out there that are willing to explore their sexuality. And it's okay. And like these look like two very, like good looking, professional, like successful people. Like they're staying at the Hazelton. They definitely have money.
Yeah, for sure. They're doing well for themselves.
And that's when I became curious to start to explore that. And honestly, I admire couples that are able to get to that. And now I can say I'm at a similar level, not quite there, but the reality is that I've been able to separate, like I said, the thought of sex only happens within a relationship, and that you can have sex that's totally removed from those feelings. And I'm able to enjoy it, whether it be with a man or woman. Like now I've come to terms with that. I do enjoy it more with a man, but it's not to say that I've never had fun with a woman and that I would never do it again. 'Cause I don't know.
Never say never.
Yeah. And I think as soon as you're able to explore that, and I've actually had this conversation with a couple of straight guy friends recently, which I'm very thankful to have those relationships, that they're so grounded in their sexuality to be able to even have that conversation. But there's this running joke that I don't really think is actually a joke, but gay guys always say, like,
you could say it, it's okay.
When a straight guy thinks that he's had the best head, he hasn't had it until he's gotten it from a man.
Oh, that's funny.
And the idea is that as a guy, you know what feels good,
of course.
So you know how to target.
I was just gonna say
exactly
that.
what he wants.
Yeah, for sure. And the same for women.
100%.
Yeah.
I actually have had, curious hetero girlfriends that say like the best sex they ever had was with a girl that they had in college or whatever, like this one night stand.
Lots of women say that.
Yeah. And I'm like, and
then they're followed by, I don't need a man. Who needs a man?
But it's like, it's not a crazy idea.
No, it's not at all.
Because when you really break it down, you're kind of like, oh, this makes sense. Like, obviously, as a guy, you know how it feels. Yeah. So you know how to.
You know what to do.
And if anything, I've had this conversation with my girlfriends who, one of them was like, oh, like, I always get complimented. I'm really good at it.
You're like, go for it. Let me see your work.
and I'm like, well, it's probably because you've communicated with him. And and she's like, yeah. And because it's something that I enjoy to do to my partners. So I'm very expressive and I want to
get
feedback.
good at it. Yeah.
And until you get there, and I think sometimes even in that front, a lot of times it's that lack of communication. One, because sometimes women could be a little bit embarrassed to think that they can be good at something like that because there's some negative connotations attached to that either like
because there's expectations. There's 100%.
Because there's all these negative connotations between an individual who is sexually active. more so for women than men.
Yeah, you're a whore if you're really good at it, and if
Exactly.
you're not, you're more angelic and naive. But at the same time, then like the guy isn't happy. It's like, and then it's hard.
Yeah.
It's
So it's
confusing.
like this crazy, like convoluted pyramid.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think once you're able to truly discover it and, like I said, get to that comfort level where you can say like, hey, like, what if we tried this? And, something that Jessica brought up is like, all it takes is that first step. It's just like, similar to how drug addicts start with something easy
Yeah.
and then they become addicted and, it spirals. With sex
in a
is like that
positive
too.
way.
In a positive lens, it's like you start with a toy and then with a certain action or a new position or whatever, and then next thing you know, you've grown that comfort to want to be, to explore more, which then takes your relationship to a whole other level.
I love that. That's really great advice. Well, thanks so much, Steven.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, plug yourself of where people can find you and listen to you and interact with you.
I'm on all the channels. It's Mr. Steven Branco. You can also check out View the Vibe. We're on Instagram and at viewthevibe.com, gentspost.com, wandereater.com. And I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much.